Hey guys, I'm Mel and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want to talk about how I studied for the PMP exam and how I was able to pass the PMP after only studying for 30 days and I passed on the first try. Yes, you heard that right. So if you are studying for the PMP, maybe you're on a crunch time, maybe you like some insight on the exam, then stay tuned. I'd love to share my tips and my tricks and what I would do differently. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so before I get into the PMP exam itself, I want to give context to kind of my project management experience because I think that it was definitely a big factor in how I was able to pass the exam. Not saying that you have to have all these things before you pass the exam, but I just want to give context into how I was able to pass in 30 days, okay? So I did already have my CAPM certification. So I want to put out that disclaimer that if you are not used to this exam format for the PMP, then you may want to think about, what your preparation may look like. But I was somewhat familiar with the PMP exam format because I took the CAPM in 2018. Now, granted, I didn't remember half of that terminology because what I use in the real life isn't necessarily that same terminology. But yeah, I did take the CAPM before, and then I also work in project management. So in my corporate job, I do healthcare project management, helping bring strategic and quality initiatives to life from start to finish. And I also have my own consulting firm on the side called Work Redefine, where I also do a lot of project management work for professionals and small businesses. So with that being said, I had a pretty substantial amount of project management experience, and so as well as taking the CAPM. And so while it was still a big learning curve and I still had to relearn all the terminology, all the processes, all of the sequences, and it was still a huge learning curve for me, I did have that background experience, and I do think that it played a role in me being able to pass the exam. So just wanted to put that out there. Now, let's get into the exam itself and what my study process was. Now, I took my exam December 18th of 2020. When you watch this video, it will be either very close to or after January 2nd, 2021. And as you know, for those who are studying the exam, that the PMP exam changes, the format changes January 2nd, 2021. So the exam that I took and the exam that you are likely going to take are two different things. So I want to make sure that we make that distinction. Now, I did my research to see what those changes were. I'm also going to put those videos in the comments section or in the description box so that you can also be able to know what's going to be different from 2020's exam to 2021's exam. But yes, I think that these tips and these tools are still generic enough to where they will still help you be able to pass. But know that the exam that I took and the exam that you will take will be different. So what my study process looked like. So because I had the CAPM, I technically didn't have to do the 36-hour required training that you have to do to qualify for the PMP if you didn't already have the CAPM. But I still chose to do the 36-hour instructor-led training. And it was really, really helpful for me because it really set the foundation. Again, yes, I have project management experience. Yes, I had the CAPM, but the PMBOK and PMI that have their own terminology, they have their own sequences and their own processes, right? And so you have to understand kind of their perspective of project management in order to pass the exam. And for me, reading through the PMBOK word for word wasn't going to help me. I needed someone to actually teach it to me. And so I was able to do that through that instructor-led training. So I will link the one that I took below, but I definitely recommend, I know it's additional money, but I definitely recommend if you can afford it to get into an instructor-led training that has an extremely high passing rate so that you can lay the foundation, because it's not enough to just start taking a bunch of practice questions and to just memorize the PMBOK. You're going to really have to understand the content, and I'm going to get into why that is later. But in order to really get a foundation on understanding project management, understanding it from the PMI and PMBOK perspective, I really, really recommend going through an instructor-led training. And that's what I did, even though I didn't have to, but it really, really helped me set the foundation. So once I did that and I learned through all the processes in detail, then I started to do practice questions. So I didn't immediately go into taking a 200 question mock exam, but I downloaded some really, really, really helpful PMP prep apps, and I'll link those below so that you can try them out. But those apps and those practice questions on those apps were super helpful in helping me test my knowledge. So I'm not taking a full exam yet. I'm just learning it through the instructor-led training, learning the terminology and things, and then I'm using the practice questions to kind of test myself. Once I do that, then I kind of understood, okay, I need to focus more on scope management, or I need to focus more on risk management, right? And so I then started to research more on those specific knowledge areas that I was struggling with. And I did that by, again, going back over the instructor-led training, but then by also going on YouTube. YouTube was a really, really, really big help for me. I know it's controversial and some people say, well, you know, the stuff on there isn't true, but it was really helpful for me. Now, I can say this when it comes to you looking for YouTube videos for studying for your PMP exam. I personally don't think that it should take the place of a paid training, because a lot of times the paid training will go in depth on the processes, but also there are a lot of people that are teaching you a lot of different things their way. And so I found myself getting somewhat overwhelmed by the amount of teachers that were teaching. And so what I did was I found 2 to 3 people that I trusted, that I looked at their comments and said, okay, you know, the people in the comments are saying that they really helped them pass the exam. And so let me, you know, subscribe to their channels. I picked 2 or 3 resources and I just left it at that. You don't want to download every single resource because it's not going to help that much. I would say get your instructor-led training, get, you know, maybe 1 or 2 apps that has the practice questions, and then, you know, go on YouTube. I'll link some additional resources that will be helpful for you, and the resources that I listen to, but pick 2 or 3 resources that will be good to listen to. And that's what I did. So I used the YouTube videos to really kind of re-emphasize, again, the areas that I was weaker in, but then to also give like tips and tricks, like the pathway to deliverables, how you go from work performance data to work performance reports, easy ways to remember the formulas, you know, easy ways to remember change requests in the process of integrated change control, things like that are really, really, really important. And it may be hard to grasp just listening to someone, you know, teach on it. But I found that some of the YouTube videos that I watched were really helpful in like tips and tricks and shortcuts and things like that to help me remember things easily. And so I did that. And then after that, I went back to practice questions. So I went back to practice questions, started taking longer exams. Now, I'll be honest, I only studied for 30 days. So I did not have time to do a full 200 mock exam. And honestly, if I had more time, I probably would have, just so I could have mentally prepared for the length of the exam, because I ended up taking the whole 4.5 hours, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But I personally would have, if I had more time, I would have taken just a couple, but a few of the full 200 practice exams that are available. Of course, again, with it being 2021, you know, keep in mind that the exam format will be different. But again, if you do have practice exams that are tailored to the 2021 format, then I would definitely recommend using those, because again, it'll help you not just with testing the information, but then also being mindful of your time. And I'll get into that. But yeah, I reviewed again. I did more practice questions. Again, whatever I didn't understand, I went back and understood the why. I looked at a lot of YouTube videos on situational questions. And I can say for my exam was probably 90% situational questions. Questions like, you know, the client has requested a change in the project. What should you do? And the multiple choice answers that they have multiple answers that could be right. And that's why it's so important to understand those processes. And this is a tip. that I definitely wanted to highlight that, memorization is not enough. And that's why I say, yes, the PMBOK is helpful. And I eventually used the PMBOK to review after I did the instructor-led training, after I did the practice questions. And like the last 2 to 3 days, I did read through the PMBOK guide to review my knowledge. But it's not enough to just memorize those inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs. It's not enough just to memorize it. You have to really understand the rationale behind it, because even the practice questions that you take are not going to be the same exact ones on the exam, right? And so it's really important when you're selecting a answer, even in the practice questions, I had to think about, okay, I know that C is the right answer, but why is C the right answer? And why am I choosing C over A, B, and D? And being able to understand the rationale will really, really, really help you be successful in the exam, because again, 90% of my questions were situational questions. And honestly, I really struggled because I was like, well, I know this could be the answer, but this could be the answer too. And I feel like if I had more time to really understand the sequence and understand the processes more in depth, then I probably would have felt more comfortable. Obviously, I still passed the exam, but I'll be honest, when I first started taking that test, about 20 questions in, I was like, I failed this. 20 questions in, I was like, man, I'm gonna have to take this again in 2021. Because this is not going well, because again, it's hard when again, there are multiple right answers and you have to think about what would the project manager do first. And so looking back, hindsight, I would really, really test yourself with those situational questions. There are a lot on YouTube. And even when you do the practice questions and you look up apps and things like that, make sure you're doing practice exams or questions that will provide the rationale behind why you should choose one answer over the other. Highly recommend that. So that was kind of my study process. Again, did the training, did practice questions, went on YouTube to look for tips and tricks and shortcuts and to re-emphasize on areas where I was weaker. And then took more practice questions. I finally looked at the PMBOK guide and reviewed it as more of a review type of thing to make sure, that everything that I was learning was also reflected in the PMBOK. And then again, I would recommend doing as many situational questions as you can. And understanding the rationale behind why you're choosing those answers. So what would I do differently? What would I do the same? So let's get into kind of those last few tips and tricks. So I definitely, if I could do it over again, I would not do it in 30 days. That is unnecessary stress. That is completely unnecessary. I had to do it because I really felt the Lord calling me to do it in 2020. And so I was doing it to be obedient, and I really felt like the Lord was going to be with me. And obviously he was. But again, I would not recommend studying in 30 days if you can help it. I would give yourself a couple of months. I personally would think, 2 to 3 months, 3 months maybe would be fine. But give yourself time to prepare, because again, in order to answer those situational questions, you really have to ingrain those processes in your brain to the point where it's like you're not even thinking about it. And so that takes time. And so I would definitely say prepare as much as you can. 2, I would say again, memorization is not enough. You want to understand the rationale behind the questions. You want to understand the sequence of the processes and what's happening in that process by sequence. So the sequence of change requests, the sequence of deliverables, things like that, you really want to focus on. 3, again, practice questions help, but know that those questions are probably not going to be on the exam. So again, understanding the rationale behind the questions and the answers is really helpful. And 4, when you're taking the test, remain calm. Okay. Again, when I was first taking it, I thought that I had failed it 20 minutes in, like 20 questions in, I thought I had failed the exam. But then also it was harder for me that since I did not take full practice exams and I wasn't able to test my timing really, it hurt me a little bit, because I would literally took the entire 4.5 hours to take the test. And, I would recommend, and this is kind of a quick tip when you're taking the exam, when you're you're going through the multiple choice questions, go ahead and select the best answer. Even if you have to take a minute to think about it, I would say select the best answer and then flag it. But I personally would not leave any questions blank because of your timing. You may not be able to go back. And so what I did was I went ahead and even on the questions that I was unsure about, I still answered it to the best of my ability. And then I flagged it. And then if I had time, I went back and went back to those flagged questions and rethought through them and changed my answer if I needed to. But what you don't want to do is, again, spend time on an answer or skip through all the ones that you don't know, and then you don't have time in the end to go back, right? And so I would definitely suggest selecting your best answer first, flag it if you're unsure, get through all the questions, and then go back to the ones that you were unsure of. So those would be kind of my tips, man. Again, I'll link all the resources that I use, all the apps that I use. There's a really nice Women of Project Management community that I love and that I highly recommend. They also have PMP coaching as well. So I'll link all of that stuff below. My last tip is to make sure that you also are looking at Agile. So if you don't know, with this new 2021 exam, I've heard it's going to highlight a lot of Agile. So the PMBOK is more so catered towards like waterfall traditional PM, but this new exam will focus a lot on Agile because honestly, we use Agile a lot in the workplace now. And so you want to be sure to focus on Agile too. And a lot of my questions were kind of reflected Agile related scenarios too. So you want to make sure that you don't skip learning about Agile and things like that. So I hope that this was helpful. Man, let me tell you. So if you are really nervous about taking the PMP exam, or maybe you're even waiting to really go, where you want to go in your project management field because you don't have this PMP certification, let me tell you, this certification, while it is great, while yes, it guarantees more salary, while yes, it gives you more credibility, know that it should not stop you from starting your passion of project management if that's really what you want to do. I can tell you from personal experience that I've been doing project management related work for the past 5-6 years, and I'm just now getting my PMP. So don't let any degree or certification validate your passion. If you're passionate about it, go ahead and get started. I remember 6 years ago, dropping out of my master's in public health program, not knowing what I was going to do with my career. And then my boss at the time introduced me to project management and I started researching it. And like 2 weeks later, I was like, let me get some projects to work on. And I was a front desk receptionist at the time, asking her to lead projects in my office. And she allowed me to do it. And I was able to start working on projects, even though I wasn't really getting paid for it. I started helping people with their side projects, outside of work, and wasn't getting paid for it, just helping people, giving people advice. And then when I realized that it was something that I was passionate about, then I went and got the MBA. Then I went and got the CAPM. Now I'm getting the PMP, but if it's something that you're passionate about, don't just wait on the certification. Experience is key and it's so important and it really trumps education. So get as much experience as you can, because I think that my experience, again, helped me pass the PMP exam, but I was already doing this, regardless if I would have passed or failed this exam. So start with what you have, start where you are, man. But yeah, let me know in the comments below when you're taking your exam or where you are in your project management career. I'd love to pray for you, agree with you, help you in any way that I can. So yeah, let me know where you are in your career in the comments below, where you are with studying for this exam. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. I talk a lot about career and business tips, my personal journey with career and business and balancing the two, balancing faith and life and walking out my purpose day by day, not getting to this destination of perfection, but really a daily commitment to progression. And so if you're interested in joining me on that journey in hopes that it will help you on your journey, then subscribe to this channel and I'd love to serve you and connect with you. So until next time, bye y'all.